Hello, and welcome to the Let's Talk Transformation podcasts. Today, we will be exploring strategic effectiveness, emotional intelligence, self-leadership, and how it can be used to leverage transformation. I am delighted to welcome Faris Aranki, founder and CEO of Shia Ghetto. Faris, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Susie. It's a real pleasure to be with you, the watchers, the listeners, just anyone who's found this podcast by any means.
Thank you. It's great to have you on the show. And I hope I pronounced the name of your company correctly. We'll come back to that.
We'll come back to that. I'll
Yeah.
tell you in a minute. Yeah.
Okay, so Faris, just quickly, I know you've had a really eclectic career
Yeah.
covering many different disciplines, but also that you're passionate about using your voice to create and share impact
Yeah.
in leading and creating strategic effectiveness, but also in conscious leadership. So hindsight is a wonderful thing, of course.
It
Can you
is.
tell
It
us
is.
more about your journey and your
Yeah.
story from, I'm going to say, from school teacher to strategy consultant
Yeah.
to emotional intelligence? Can you
Yeah.
tell us more about that?
Yes. So, hopefully I'll inspire anyone out there that you can go on your own journey, no matter how ridiculous.
I have no doubt.
So many years ago I did start as that eponymous school teacher. I used to teach the two very incredible subjects, or at least in my eyes, of maths and economics. Unfortunately, most kids disagreed with me. They thought certainly maths was terrible. And that's probably where I learned all my people skills. But I did that for 6 years and I taught around the world, and it was so great to immerse myself in different cultures. You think teaching maths would be the same around the world because it's just, it's a maths, it's its own language, but it's not. You go and teach in
Mm.
Latin America, you go and teach in South Asia, you go and teach in the Middle East. So that was 6 years of my life, but then I decided to close that chapter and I actually wanted to try my hand at the corporate world. Ended up joining an energy firm, an oil and gas firm, just by chance, not because I was fascinated by oil and gas, but I became quickly interested. I spent 4 years there, but really I gravitated towards the strategy team. I loved using my maths and economics to solve complex problems. And then I got a tap on the shoulder from a headhunter who said, "Come on, here's lots of money. Come and work in strategy consulting." So I did that for the next 12 years of my life, sort of completing the game, which was
Mm.
went from analyst to partner. And you go, "Way, I've made it to partner," and then you realize
And now
that
what?
it's not as, yeah. And so that's when my brain was like, "Oh, maybe I should do something else." And that's when it wasn't just that, an epiphanic moment, but I did sort of put together saying, what do I really enjoy about this career? Solving problems, but through people, getting
Mm.
them to really buy into. And that's, at the time I didn't call it emotional intelligence, but it really was bringing more emotional intelligence to that decision making. And so I set up a business all around that.
Mm.
And I've been doing that the last 5 years where we go in and get more out of a team. We get them working better together, put in more of that emotional intelligence because it really impacts their strategy and their likelihood that they will deliver that strategy.
Mm. So you've worked in loads of different places with loads of different cultures, and we'll come back to that as to what it means for what you do today. But let
Yeah.
me come to your company name, Shia
Yes.
Ghetto, which I hope is pronounced like that.
It is. I say that hesitant because 2 years into having set up the company, it's a Japanese name.
Yes.
It was the first time I said it to a Japanese person. And they just looked at me blankly, and in my head, I was like, "Oh my God, have I been saying this
You're
wrong?"
meant to understand this.
Yeah. But it was
Okay.
just that he emphasized shige to,
Ashigeto. Okay.
because it means sharpening tool or sharpening stone. And because it's a nice metaphor for what we do. So shiogeto is what you use to sharpen a knife or a sword in
Yeah.
Japanese culture. Obviously, we're not doing that for knives or swords. We're doing that for human beings. So that's hence the name.
Okay, excellent. And I was going to say, what is the link between your purpose and what you do and the name of, this Japanese concept?
Yeah,
And so it's sharpening the saw in sort of Covey's words in terms of
yeah,
humans.
yeah.
So how do you do that,
So
Faris?
if you take the sharpening concept, if you think about how we all go through life, particularly on the work side, but any aspect of our life,
Mm,
we are never as sharp as we could be. We
totally.
have inherent potential, but we
Mm,
don't bring it into every situation in our thinking, in how we interact with the other people, in our focus. That's what we go in and unlock.
mm,
And we do it through a range of techniques, usually very similar, if any of my clients are watching, to what I used to do with the school children. right?
So
Through
interesting, isn't it?
yeah, it's
Humans are humans.
humans are human. It doesn't matter if they're wearing an oversized suit or they're, spotty with acne.
Yeah.
They love simple things. They love to be entertained. And you know what? They love these things just make them smile more, work more, better, think better. So we either add that stardust and get that out of teams, or we train the leader to do that for their team, so
Mm,
that they'll get the most out of them.
mm,
So if you come and join one of our sessions, you might see us playing games in the boardroom, but with the intention of getting those people working better together. Or you might see us step in and change how a meeting is run
mm,
to limit some of the bad behaviors we're seeing in the room.
mm.
Um, so we have a range of techniques, and often they're very subtle, but the key is they always deliver results.
Yeah, and I think another key, which I've also taken from your recent TED Talk and your thoughts and musings about having done that TED Talk, is the
Yeah.
key is fun. And
Yeah.
that's what you're saying, isn't it? Fun is, and there's a lot of research now behind playfulness and fun and bringing that into the workplace and how it can leverage different parts of the brain.
Yeah.
And I know you often say there's a missing piece in how most businesses approach performance, if you like.
Yeah.
So we were saying before the show that you're going to sprinkle your gold dust. So let's start now. Um, can you tell us more about the missing piece and why it's such a blind spot?
So the missing piece, I mean, there's several missing pieces, but we say to be successful at anything, you need three components, and most people have one,
Mm,
sometimes two, but definitely not all three in harmony on things that matter.
mm,
So the first component is a great strategy, a great idea. Right? Whatever you want to achieve in life, you need a plan to get there. You need
yeah.
a thought, not the first thought, but the best thought.
Mm,
And it's amazing how many times in business they just take old ideas and rehash them and go, yeah, that's our strategy. So that's where we start with all teams.
mm,
What's your plan? What's your strategy? And we can definitely sharpen that for you.
mm.
And in many companies, they do have a good strategy. They've hired very smart people and they've written very technical papers. But if you don't have the second component, which is the EQ, the emotional intelligence, to take others on the journey with you, to go, look at my idea, isn't it
Mm,
exciting? Don't you want to be part of it? Don't you understand it? That's where sometimes very technical people fall down. They go, well, I love it. Why don't you love it? Come on.
mm.
Um,
Is that how
so
you
it's
got
that
kids
second.
to understand maths and economics?
Well, exactly. It was the kids with maths and economics. So that's the second component. And yes, some firms can do that. Get the excitement, get the remove the complexity. But the third part is the focus. Is the focus
Mm,
question. If you want to be super successful, you need to give it the right due care and focus. And so many times in business, they set themselves up to not be successful by doing too many competing priorities.
mm.
And so the third aspect we are helping them with is to prioritize, anticipate any barriers to that success and strip them away before you even start the project or start your strategy. So we call it FQ, but that is often the missing component, and it's immensely powerful.
I like the IQ, EQ, FQ equation, which is your
Yes.
formulaic success, isn't it? But so do you think that from what you've seen to date, Faris,
Yeah.
the FQ is the one that's missing the most, or does it depend on culture, size of organization? Can you tell us a bit about your insights into
Yeah,
what's missing?
it's really funny. I often do a straw poll at the start of a
Mm,
meeting or a talk saying, which of these three do you think your team lacks or do you personally lack? And there is definitely a trend of more hands go up when I talk about FQ.
right.
And I think that's because two reasons. One, most people have never heard of FQ. So
FQ,
it's
I
like,
was
well,
gonna say.
that one
I don't
sounds
know what it
interesting. I'm going to say,
is.
but also if you step back and think about it, it's the safest place to admit a weakness.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Oh,
get
oh,
distracted.
totally. Yeah.
Totally. Whereas the others are basically saying, I'm really terrible at dealing with people, or I'm stupid, is how people interpret it. So they go, oh, I'm not willing to admit to either of those two, so I'll stick my hand up. But the reality is, and then I say to them, the reality is, certainly from my company point of view, and we work with over 70 different corporations,
Mm,
we are brought in more times for the EQ pillar.
okay.
The fact that you're not working well together, that you have got silos in your business, you have conflict, you don't see each other as friends, you see each other as foes.
Yeah.
And that I said, and that's something you should really think about. That why is it that we are consistently being pulled into this when you think it's focus?
Mm. Well, and I
Um,
suppose if you mix the lack of EQ with a lack of FQ, not only are we not anticipating we've got too many priorities, we're not communicating, we don't know what each other's
yeah,
doing.
exactly, exactly.
Oh,
And the reality is these three are interlinked,
yeah.
right? Let's take let's take prioritization, for example.
Mm.
You know, most business professionals we work with are not stupid.
No.
Don't use that word. They know they should be doing less.
Mm.
That's not the problem. It's not academically whether
Mm.
they know. It is emotionally, can they let go of stuff? Right. So a classic example for us, I often tell the story of, the first time this happened to me, I walked into a company and I said to them, how many strategic projects are you doing? Can we do an audit? And they,
Mm.
first of all, they didn't know. So they had to go away and audit it. And they came back. And the CFO, I sat with him because he had led the audit. And he said, we're doing 200, Faris. And I said,
What?
200, let's just say that slowly. 200 strategic projects on top of business as usual. Don't you think that's too much? He said, yes, of course it's too much, but we can't stop them. I said, why not? He said, he went through every one of the projects and he explained a very rational reason. Well, we needed this one because our IT systems were out of date. We needed this one
Mm.
because it was the pet project of the CEO. We needed this one because we needed. And I said, yeah, but it's all adding up to chaos. So I said, don't worry. I understand. I'm going to help you. So I went away and overnight I turned those 200 projects into a deck of Pokemon cards. Okay.
No.
So
Oh,
I got the
brilliant.
laminator out, the old school teacher. I turned each one into a card, and I don't know if have you ever played Pokemon, Susie?
Unfortunately, yes, I have, yeah.
Okay,
In
good
fact,
man.
play
So
it quite regularly with my son.
you play it with your son, so you understand. But basically, for those who might not have seen it, it's basically a bunch of cards that have got statistics on them,
Yeah,
and you play a game where you read out your statistic versus their
the
statistic, and
statistic, yeah.
and the one with the highest statistic wins. So basically, this was it, and I used their own data crucially. So they had a business case for each of these projects around how long is it going, how much is it going to cost, how long will it take, how many people are going to be involved. Anyway, I came into the boardroom and we played. I said to them, "We're going to play Pokemon."
How
They
did they
looked at me
react to
like
that? Just that.
they were like, "Why are we playing Pokemon? We're adults with this
Who's
leadership
who's
team.
this guy?
Who's this guy?" And I said, "Trust me, we're just going to have fun, recreate your youth. We're going to play Pokemon." And divided the cards equally. And we started playing, and people began to get frustrated because their cards were losing. And I said, well, it's not, don't blame the card, me, right? It's the card. It's terrible. Just get rid of it, make your hand stronger, right?
Nice,
So during the course of the game, the weaker cards
nice.
were being thrown away. And we got to a point where we just had strong cards, or the ones we thought were strong. And lo and behold, those were only 30 projects. And I said,
Wow.
we can now get rid of this weak deck. Right? We're not saying they don't make sense. They're just not as strong as the other ones. And so it was a different way of tackling that emotion of saying goodbye to something,
Mm,
closing it down, but in a fun and engaging way. So I regularly play Pokemon now with that
brilliant.
client, but other clients I use a similar sort of things to help the EQ bring to FQ.
Yeah, and it also brings in a different space, doesn't it, Faris? If we're playing,
Yeah,
I'm maybe going to say something or admit something that I'm maybe not. If you sat opposite me and went, so do you think we should let this project go? You know?
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Coming back to your, the fact that you've worked in so many different cultures, in so many different areas, and with so many different people,
Yeah.
how do you tweak this formula for cultural differences? And do you see huge cultural differences across your formula and clients?
Yes. So for me, all cultural difference sits in EQ, really,
Yes. Okay.
or the bulk of it is.
Mm.
I tell leaders the secret to great EQ is follow the platinum rule, not the golden rule,
Hmm.
right? So for those
What
who
does that
don't,
mean?
yeah, the golden rule is something I'm sure in every language you were told as a kid, treat others how you would
Okay.
like to be
Yes.
treated. Yeah. And I said, well, there's an infinite upgrade, which is, and I didn't invent this, but is treat others how they want to be treated.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
Don't apply your standards, apply their standards. And the only way you can know that is by talking to them and finding out. So
Real human conversation.
real human conversations. Don't make an assumption that just because you like it, they'll like it.
Yeah.
And that's how you can adapt to any culture. But obviously, you've got to ask questions, you've got to observe, you've got to. So it's really fascinating bringing that in, because I often talk about. I work with one client where we deliver a leadership program globally.
Mm.
And so I'm teaching exactly the same content, the same IQ, in Asia, in
Mm.
Africa, in Europe, in the Americas, and it makes me laugh. The first year I did it, I was like, it took me back to that classroom. I was like,
Mm,
oh, I've got these kids with this dynamic. I have to adapt how I deliver it. So let's take the very simple situation where you explain some new concept and you want to just ask people what they think about
mm,
it. Right? In Europe, you have one dynamic. Okay, people will hesitant, the more confident people will stick their hand up or
mm,
shout out. Okay. But in Asia, very, very hierarchical. As soon as I
yeah,
asked that question, everyone not only went silent, they physically turned their bodies to face the most senior person in the room and
brilliant.
wait for them to say something. What was their opinion? Before I can even tell you my opinion, I have to. My culture says I have to let this.
Mm,
And so if you didn't know who the most senior person was, you'd soon be revealed.
yeah.
So in that dynamic, as soon as you know that, you know not to ask a group of people what do they think.
Mm,
You go, okay, I want you to get into pairs. So I made sure people were in pairs of an equal hierarchical level and say, what do you as a pair think? All right. You have to come
nice.
up with an answer, right? So you just got to adapt to get the best. Similarly, when I was in Africa, you ask that question, literally everyone in the room will shout out an answer because culturally it's totally acceptable.
Mm,
And not only
mm,
will they shout out an answer, it'll be a very long answer.
mm,
So as a facilitator there or someone at the front of the room, you just have to learn. You have to be very dominant and say, no, just you, and your answer has to be less than a minute. And they don't take any offense. They just
yeah.
go, oh, okay, I've been picked this time. I might not be picked next time. So really fascinating. That for me is how you adapt to cultures, and it doesn't come without observation and questions.
Mm. And so when you go to multinational
Yeah.
board meetings
Yeah.
where you've got all those cultures around the table with a mix of seniority and status,
Yes.
what happens there? Are they willing to play? Are they willing to step out of, are they willing to step out of that? I'm going to use the new LinkedIn thing of action figure, of their sort
Oh
of
yeah, the action figure.
avatar. Are they willing to
Um,
step out of it?
there's
I
a
did
lot of
that this
those, isn't there?
I
Yeah.
did that this morning. It's
Did you do
quite
it?
scary.
Is it?
I didn't
Are you
recognize.
not happy? Would you not buy it in Hamleys or are you
No, no.
off Amazon?
So it's probably quite accurate, but no, I wouldn't.
I haven't done that as yet, but
That's
look,
good.
when you've got really mixed culture, it's a lot of legwork as a facilitator,
Mm, mm,
right? People think it's just what happens in the room, but if it's an important meeting, I will get to know every individual. I'll have time with them before to understand
mm.
their personality type. And while culture gives you a sense, you can have a very extroverted Japanese person.
Yeah,
Right? So
totally.
don't lazily make assumptions that,
Yes.
yeah.
Boxing
So
people
that's
in.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that's why you need to get to know people, and even a half hour with them is
Mm,
very powerful.
mm,
But if I was robbed of that, then I go back to lowest common denominator. Keep things
mm.
short, simple. Nowadays, pretty much every meeting I run, I don't let people shout out
Right.
because particularly in cross-cultural ones,
Yeah.
all it will do is dominate those who have English as a mother tongue, those who are extroverted. So whenever I'm going to introduce a topic, I will say to everyone, I want you to write your opinion on a piece of paper,
Mm,
right? The answer to this question. And I'll make sure I put the question up in writing so they can process it, and
mm,
not have to rely on, did I understand the nuance? Might have missed that word. And if it's really important, I will pre-tell them before the meeting, we're going to discuss this. Can you submit your views?
mm,
And then I'll pull together their views into a paper in one form or another and take names off it and get
mm,
everyone to read each other's views
mm.
to kind of help people who don't have English but also,
Yeah.
yeah, also limit as much as possible that sort of um, dominance of extroverts or people who've got the home court advantage. So
Mm, yeah. No, really excellent. And I know that you're a big believer in collective intelligence, co-creation. We had that discussion
yeah,
already before the
yeah,
show. And you do things like your shout outs on LinkedIn and things like that
yes,
to sort of, showcase voices that we may not hear.
yeah,
Um, which brings me to a more sort of real question of how, as small businesses, can we have more impact in what we do? Because I think, and we've also had this discussion, but I think
yeah,
setting up your own business can be very exhilarating. It can also be very lonely. And one
yeah,
of the biggest questions one can ask oneself, I know it was my biggest question, and it continues to be so, is
yeah.
how, as a small business, can I have huge impact? Which I think is, that's why people set up because they're passionate about what they do. So I'd be really interested, Faris, in your insights on that.
Yeah. I think, as a strategist,
Yeah.
if you sent me that exam question, I would spend time unpacking that exam question, right? What does
Yeah,
huge impact mean? Huge impact for you might mean something different to me.
totally. Yeah, yeah.
Um, so you've got to understand the size of your ambition,
Mm, mm,
okay? And whatever is the size, and whatever size is fine.
yeah.
Right? Don't let somebody else's ambition judge you. It's always fascinating. I always found after the first couple of years of my business, it's what I call the China phenomenon. Everyone, because we grew so quickly in years 2 and 3, everyone just came and went, so you're going to double again next
Oh,
year?
yeah, yeah,
You're
yeah,
going to
yeah.
double again next year? I'm like, why?
Pressure, pressure.
Yeah, the pressure. And you're like, because you doubled last year. I'm like, but it's funny how people just come
Yes.
and so yeah, first of all that, and then so whatever your impact, make sure you're applying pressure on the right point of the lever.
Mm, mm,
In old physics, maximum impact, go to the end of any lever or cantilever and press on the end.
yeah.
But many small businesses just press too close to the center.
Mm,
Um, you know, ask yourself, I always say, particularly with FQ or IQ, I say, great, your idea is great. What would be a 15% better idea? Or what would your nemesis, who has your business, is thinking exactly the same resources, what would they do to get more impact? And that
interesting
usually
question.
liberates people to think a little. They go, well, they would ring up the CEO of this company instead of sending them an email. So why aren't you doing that? Right? Why? Yeah, if your nemesis would do it, why would you not do it? Oh, yeah, okay, actually, I'm going to do that. Or they go and talk in a public forum. Okay, so why aren't you doing that?
Mm,
So now I'm not saying you'll always get that right, but so part of it is be clear on what your actual measure is. Second
mm,
is challenge your own assumptions because you can always get more impact because you're sort of closing yourself down. Uh,
mm.
but really, the real superpower of small businesses who want to make more of an impact is be like the Avengers, team up.
Yeah.
You can only defeat so many baddies on your own, but together we are infinitely better. And you may stumble into this world, but the sooner you do it, and when I say it might be by growing out your business, right? Your
Mm,
partnerships could be the team that you grow below you, but it's the old saying, you'll only go so far alone,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, totally. Totally.
So yeah, that for me is the secret.
And is it I'm going to ask you for a little bit more of your gold dust now, Faris. Is
Okay.
if I were to transpose that
Yeah.
into a organizational context,
Yes.
would your insights and advice be the same? If I'm
Yeah.
already in an organization and I already have a big team, but I still want to have, in my definition of huger impact across the
Yeah.
organization,
Yeah.
would it be the same advice or?
Yeah, completely, right? It's amazing how often, when I said I work on that EQ pillar,
Mm,
I'll go in and say, you're not talking to each other enough, but B, you are certainly not talking to enough of the business enough,
mm,
right? And I want to 10x how much you're talking to other parts of the business. So what we're going to do is stupid things like random coffee generator, where each week you each have to meet a random person from another department, have coffee for them, and we'll just pull their name out of the hat, right? Or lunch, and the boss will pay for the lunch, right? Or job swap.
mm,
Yeah, you are going to go and swap jobs with Steve from sales for the afternoon, or go and shadow him.
mm.
These things will not. They are not a waste of time. Right? They are
Okay.
far more powerful than spending an extra 2 hours on some slides
Yeah.
because just getting a little bit of a connection into things. And they've shown this before. Have you ever heard of the randomized taxi experiment?
No.
So they took a bunch of employees from a company, and they'd all just been away on an away day, and they would they'd taken them back to the airport, and they said to them, they said, sorry, the taxis have been sorted by someone in HR, and these are the who you've got to sit with, right? And so half the group, it wasn't by accident. Half the group
Really?
put in tea with their regular team to share a taxi, so people that
Mm,
you were comfortable with. The other half of the company were put in with three random people, so people they did not know or knew
mm,
loosely. They then tracked the conversations that happened once they all went back to work. And the people who'd sat with random people for 15 minutes on the way to an airport were more likely to instigate more conversations around the firm and therefore be more successful in their job as a result, because things would come up and go, oh, we need to talk to someone in accounts. Oh, I met John in a taxi and he's from accounts.
Yeah.
I'll reach out to him with an email. And so just this stupid idea of just getting two people who don't normally talk to each other to talk to each other will make you more successful. So I do a lot of that.
Mhm.
And I encourage every firm to do it. In fact, I haven't managed to convince a firm yet, but I say that firms of a certain size should have a professional networker internally whose sole job is to connect people and introduce people. And people look at me when I say this, they go, that's bonkers. And I'm like,
I'm like, can I have that job?
I'll have that job. And I think they'll pay for themselves within 6 months.
Yeah,
But
totally. And it's about stimulating their brain, isn't it? Taking them out of probably what you'd need to work on with them for the FQ
yeah,
and getting them to sort of just get curious
yeah,
and want to learn more about things that and people that they know absolutely nothing about.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's interesting on the subject of connection, and time is running, but I can't let you go, Faris, without asking you a question on
Yeah.
AI,
Yeah.
because this whole discussion around, well, we've talked about action figures and the power of generative AI, and it doesn't have human connection, of course.
Yeah.
So, what do you think that the onset of AI will bring to the way businesses can use your formula, particularly
Yeah.
the EQ part? Where do you see the effects on that?
I mean, it can help in all the parts, right? I see it most helpful in the IQ pillar.
Yeah, yeah,
Sharpen your ideas, generate. I say to teams, the great thing about AI is you're no longer thinking alone, right? Because
yeah,
part of sharpening IQ is come up with 100 ideas, not
yeah, not one.
not one. And the way we in the old ways you used to get 100 was by getting more people in the room who think
Mm.
differently to you. But now AI can do that for you. So it will really help in that, but it can even help in the FQ pillar. You can put it
Mm.
the 10 competing priorities you have, you tell it a bit about your world. It will say, because it takes emotion out of it, going, well, it's obvious you should do these three things, right? And
Yeah.
but it can never, what I was going to say, it is less helpful in the EQ pillar, right?
Mm.
Whatever idea it spits out, you still have to go and communicate that to another human being.
Mm. Yeah.
Uh, and I worry, and I often talk about my nephews as a test case. I worry that the more we rely on stuff like this, that it will become a weaker muscle. I look at mine, and I
Yeah.
say to my nephews, they are scared senseless of picking up a phone and ringing.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. They'll happily, they actually, I'll ring them and they'll instantly message me back. What do you want, uncle? Like, why can't you say it in a message? And I said, because I want you to learn how to speak on the phone and I'm your uncle, so just answer the damn phone, right? Because asynchronous is easy. Synchronous
Yes.
is where the real EQ sits. And you do
Mm.
need to get better at having difficult conversations or just chatting shit,
Mm.
right? The
Yeah.
better you'll be in life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where I worry about over-indexing on AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if we define collaboration in any context as the quality of the conversations you're having, that's quite scary, isn't it? The reality of AI on that.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I mean, a tool is just a tool,
Mm.
right? So
Mm.
don't blame the tool sometimes. But yeah, it's a fantastic opportunity. And worst case to worst, comes to worst, it just means more work for people like you and me to fill in that EQ gap. So
Yes,
there you
absolutely.
go. A win's a win for us, not for society.
Come and make you have coffee in taxis with random strangers. That's fair enough. Faris,
Part of the fun.
just before we go, can
Yeah.
you tell us what has been the most transformative thing for you
Hmm.
since you started your career? What is the one thing that sticks in your mind as this has been what I've built on or what's guided
Yeah.
me to
Yeah.
date?
Yeah. Um, I mean, invariably, it's something earlier on in my career.
Yeah.
And I still talk about it as the most pivotal year was when I translocated myself to teach in a village school in Nepal. It was so alien to the world I had existed in.
Mm,
And even then, I thought, oh, I can do teaching now. I kind of semi got that under my belt. But to go to such a foreign place with such
mm,
a foreign culture and adapt to that, even the most basic of things that when I talked about the platinum rule, a
yeah.
lot of it came from there. And I often tell this. I'll tell a very short version of the story. But even as something as simple as asking somebody to pass me the salt, right? caused a massive change in my view in the world, because was living with a local family, and I on for the whole first week for dinner I asked the dad to pass me the salt, please. And after a week, he erupted when I said this, and he threw the salt at me, and I was like, "What the hell have I done?" And he explained to me. He said, "Will you stop saying please and thank you?" Right? And I said, "Why?" He said, "In my culture, you say please and thank you for something that is out of the ordinary. If someone saves your life,
Oh,
if
wow.
somebody does something above and beyond, if you say please and thank you for something like salt, passing the salt, you're implying that person is such a scum of the earth, they wouldn't do that." So you're
Wow.
actually insulting me by adding, and just stuff like that. Every day I was challenged on my view of the world,
Wow.
uh, and it just, yeah, changed how I um, approached people in that EQ
Yeah.
pillar.
That's when you started sharpening
That
the
is when I was
knife.
like, I have got a lot to learn. I am basically back at square one.
Yeah.
And the sooner I get more curious and don't just assume when I walk into a room, the better I'll be, and it'll be better for the other people.
Mm. And for me, that's the whole learning though, isn't it? We all have a lot to learn still. Whatever we've done today, we all still have a lot to learn.
Completely. You're
Yeah.
never the finished deal. Don't believe your own hype.
No.
Just be more curious, and the
Yeah.
world will be a better place.
Yeah, you can never tick a finished box, which is good in a way. On that note, Faris, what would your final call to action be to our listeners who are sitting there thinking, okay, I need to do something. How could I start?
Yeah. Go and have more conversation. Right? Ask one more question than you feel comfortable asking, or that you would normally ask. Right? And allow more silence to listen to the answer. Whatever situation you're in, that'll improve your IQ, it'll improve your EQ, and it'll improve your FQ. So the answer is simple, but getting into that place, all it takes is you to give it a go.
Excellent. I'm going to leave our listeners with that statement of intention, and I'm going to stick to it and remain silent. So thank you, Faris. Where can people find out more about you, what you do, your company?
Yeah, sure. Well, Shia Ghetto is you can come and find us on the web, www.shiaghetto.com. You can read all about Japanese sharpening stones and other such things. Or you can, if you want to hear more of my wacky stories or read about them, come follow me on LinkedIn or connect with me on LinkedIn, because I post every day little IQ, EQ, FQ stories from my own life. I answer every message and probably spend a bit too much time on LinkedIn, but you can join the journey there.
Okay, excellent. So I'll put those in the show notes so that people can
Thank
find
you very
you
much.
easily. All right, thanks, Faris. Great
Thank you
start to
very
my
much.
day. Thank you very much. Bye.